Welcome to the Parenting Tips Podcast. I'm Jeff Ryland. In this episode, we are going to talk about parental incarceration. This, like many episodes in this podcast, is a tough topic to talk about. If you have a child in your life who has a parent that is incarcerated, this episode is for you. If you are listening to this episode on children of incarcerated parents, you are very likely part of the village of adults who has stepped in to continue to raise this child. Hopefully, the information provided will get you started on your quest to help your child manage the challenging thoughts and feelings they have when their parent is incarcerated. You may be the other parent who is now parenting in a solo capacity. The incarcerated parent may be your current partner, and you're wondering how to facilitate your partner's relationship with your child. The incarcerated parent may be your ex-partner, and you may be uncertain about how to facilitate that relationship. You may be the grandparent or other relative who has stepped in to help raise children in the parent's absence due to incarceration. There are many factors that can help you determine what is best for your child. There is no one right way to move forward. Some of the factors may include the nature of the criminal offense committed, the quality of the parent-child relationship before the incarceration, and the age of the child. There may or may not be friction between you and the other parent. You might ask, why an episode on children of incarcerated parents? Well, because it's a real thing. While most families may never have to deal with this unfortunate situation, some do. For certain, a parent's incarceration is never the fault of the child. This is important to point out because many young children take on the guilt associated with that thought, that they did something wrong to make their parent go to jail or prison. This podcast episode will provide a brief overview of the situation where children have a parent who's incarcerated and offer some general guidelines for your consideration. More importantly, the podcast will highlight some excellent resources that you can access on the internet to help guide you in your own journey trying to manage this situation for the child or children involved. Data gathered from the National Survey on Children's Health in 2018 estimated that more than 5 million children experienced parental incarceration. This is roughly 1 in 100 children who may have a parent sitting in jail or prison at any given time. The effects of parental incarceration on children are not small. Parental incarceration was one of the original 10 adverse childhood experiences that were part of studies dating back to the mid-1990s. Children can experience a range of emotions from sadness and shame to anger and confusion. Children of incarcerated parents have elevated risk for a host of challenges, including problems with school performance, learning and developmental delays, and sometimes behavioral problems. It's important to be clear that parental incarceration is not the cause of these problems. The reason these increased risks cannot be directly attributed to a parent's incarceration is that additional factors such as poverty, parental substance abuse, witnessing intimate partner violence, parental mental illness, and a host of other stresses may predate the incarceration. A parent's incarceration is not a good thing for a child to experience. However, there are certain protective factors that can create a buffer that may reduce some of the negativity. Some of these protective factors include the quality of the home environment, the caregiver's support following incarceration, the child's social and emotional skills, and the quality of contact with the parent during incarceration. Frequent and meaningful ways to have contact is associated with better outcomes for children when they had a positive relationship prior to incarceration. For more information on adverse childhood experiences and protective factors, check out episodes 64 and 66 in the Parenting Tips podcast series. Talking to kids about the incarcerated parent can be hard. A common question from caregivers is, how much do you tell your children about why their parent is incarcerated? I wish there was a simple answer. It would never be okay to outright lie, to say that the parent is on vacation or a work trip. On the other hand, it is often not okay to share minute details of the parent's legal challenges and the crimes they have been charged with. As a general guideline, it is best to start with limited information. It may cause a flurry of additional questions. Move cautiously in answering. Consider your child's age and their ability to understand and make sense of complex information that you are sharing with them. When in doubt, tell your child, "That is a very good question," and you'll need to think about it and how best to answer it. You can consider writing it in the Great Question book discussed in episode 30 of the Parenting Tips podcast series. By doing this, you honor the child's question and give yourself time to consider the best response. Ask trusted others for guidance. Seek professional direction if needed. It is okay to not have an answer right away. Children may have questions about their parents and about themselves. The question, "What will happen to me?" is common. It would make sense that a child might worry about where they will live if their parent is incarcerated. There are many factors that influence that decision and drive that worry for children. If they have a stable household with a non-incarcerated parent or another relative, they may be less anxious. However, if this home life is not stable and predictable, and if they have previously been in multiple home placements or experienced homelessness, this may be a very real worry for them. It is important to make sure the child or children know they will be safe and will be cared for by adults that they can trust. For some children, if they've witnessed a parent's arrest or previously experienced uncertainty in their home life, the question, "What will happen to me?" makes perfect sense. Another common question that children ask is, "Can I see my parent while they're in jail or in prison?" This depends on so many factors. If the child has a meaningful relationship with the parent, and if the parent is allowed visitors, and if the parent's jail or prison is accessible to where the child lives, and if the parent with custody or guardianship determines it is a good idea for the child to have the visit to the incarcerated parent, then a visit might happen. There are quite a few ifs here. This is because each circumstance is different. Assuming the child wants to see the incarcerated parent in person, it would be important for the involved parent to help determine if it's possible and if it would be helpful to the child. If the incarcerated parent has a positive relationship with the child, the research tells us that maintaining that relationship has good outcomes for children. If the incarcerated parent does not have a positive relationship or a meaningful relationship with the child, or no relationship at all, then it is much less clear if it would be a benefit to the child. An incarcerated parent might want to see their children. Sometimes children don't want to see them. They may be mad at the parent for going to jail. They may be embarrassed or ashamed of what the parent did to be incarcerated. They may be mad that the parent made poor choices that took them away from the child. It would be important to not push the child into a visit. For most parents who are incarcerated, there are other options. While it seems old-fashioned, snail mail can reach incarcerated parents. Sometimes these letters are brief, depending on the child's age. They may include drawings or pictures of some event or special day. The letter can be updates about sports, school, season changes, or other activities. Young children often need help with crafting a letter to a parent. This is okay. For children who can write, a few sentences about each topic may be all they need to share. A more common form of communication is a telephone. As a general rule, it is best to expect phone conversations with young children to be brief. While the incarcerated parent may miss his or her children, the goal of the phone call is to help the child know that their parent is safe and doing okay. It helps for both the adult facilitating the phone call and the incarcerated parent to clearly understand what topics can be talked about. This gives the child and custodial caregiver time to help the child make a list of memories to share. It helps the incarcerated parent to know what topics to ask questions about. Asking about school, sports, other hobbies, friends, and season changes are common topics that encourage conversation between the child and the incarcerated parent. For very young children, briefer is better. While the incarcerated parent may miss their children, it is more important to keep the telephone visits brief and enjoyable so the child doesn't get bored and start avoiding the phone call altogether. Briefer is better. You want children to want to come back for more. Similarly, virtual visits can be utilized when and where appropriate. However, like phone calls, it is best to keep the call brief, between 5 and 15 minutes for young children, as it is often difficult to keep their attention. It helps when the non-incarcerated parent or another trusted adult helps facilitate the conversation. If a virtual visit drags on and on, the child becomes uncomfortable or bored, their interest in the visits will decline. There is a great resource for video visits called Strengthening and Maintaining Family Connections, Best Practices for Child-Friendly Video Visiting. A link is available in the show notes. If visiting the incarcerated parent in person is possible for you and your child, it's important to check with the requirements established by the specific jail or prison. Please check out the link to How to Explain Jails and Prisons to Children, a Caregiver's Guide. For those of you who are concerned about your child having a parent who is incarcerated, I would like to read the 8 statements that make up the child of an incarcerated parent's Bill of Rights. If you or your child has experienced a loved one being incarcerated, a number of these statements may resonate with you. 1. I have the right to be kept safe and informed at the time of my parent's arrest. 2. I have the right to be heard when decisions are made about me. 3. I have the right to be considered when decisions are made about my parent. 4. I have the right to be well cared for in my parent's absence. 5. I have the right to speak with, see, and touch my parent. 6. I have the right to support as I face my parent's incarceration. 7. I have the right not to be judged, blamed, or labeled because my parent is incarcerated. 8. I have the right to a lifelong relationship with my parent. A copy of this Bill of Rights, along with the detailed explanation for each of these rights, can be found through a link in the show notes under Bill of Rights for Children of Incarcerated Parents. To recap, the numbers of children who have a parent who is incarcerated is not small. It's important for caregivers to be open and honest about what is happening, but also balance this with limited information based on the child's age and ability to understand. The relationship between the child and their incarcerated parent does not go away when the parent is in jail or prison. Research on childhood outcomes supports that when children who had a positive relationship with their parent before the parent was incarcerated do better when they are able to maintain that relationship. There are many ways that children can maintain that relationship with their incarcerated parent, although the communication needs to be facilitated by caring adults and is subject to jail or prison rules and regulations for communication and visits. There is an excellent resource guide titled How to Explain Jails and Prisons to Children, a Caregiver's Guide. This was created by the California Department of Corrections, and it can guide caregivers and children through the all-important conversations that happen when a parent is incarcerated. Questions like, why did mom or dad go to jail or prison? Will this happen to me? Is it my fault? How do people in jail or prison spend their time? Can I see or talk to mom and dad when they're in jail or prison? This is really a brief and excellent primer for the caregiver and the child of a parent who is in prison. The link to this resource, along with other resources on children of parents who are incarcerated, are in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in and considering this parenting topic. I hope that this information added to your growing toolbox for parenting your child or children. Please consider exploring other topics in this series. Remember, no one parenting tool can do everything. We need many tools to become the best parents for our children. Your children's future depends on you and the time and effort you invest in them today.